just anxious. Okay, so like to read the land recognition statement. We begin this meeting by acknowledging the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and the Anishinaabe peoples, many of whom continue to live and work here today. This territory is covered by the Upper Canada Treaties and is within the land protected by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement. Today, this gathering place is home to many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples, and acknowledging reminds us that our great standard of living is directly related to the resources and friendship of Indigenous people. Okay, so we've circulated the agenda. Any additions or deletions to the agenda? Seeing none, could I have someone move that we accept the agenda? Wayne, Bill, seconder, all in favor? So carried, thank you. Does anyone have a declaration of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof to declare? Seeing none. The minutes of February 16th, 2022 of the Pelham Finance and Audit Committee has been circulated. Any additions or deletions to those minutes? Seeing none, could I have someone move to accept those, approve those in minutes, please? Bill, Michael, seconder, all in favor? So carried, thank you. And we'll jump to number 7, new business. There's been an insertion with respect to the municipal elections. Everyone's had an opportunity to read that. The clerk's just essentially looking for volunteers to assist with the elections. So if you feel inclined to do so, please reach out to the clerk. And that brings us to number 8 and 8.1, presentation by Trevor Ferguson. So Trevor, welcome to the meeting, and I'll throw it over to you.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here today. I'll be going through our audit results presentation, which starts at page 8.1 of the committee's package. I'm not going to do a page flip on everything. I will speak to a few items at a high level, and then I welcome questions at any time. So please, let's keep this informal. No need to wait till the end or anything like that. I want to start just by saying a huge thank you to Teresa and Charlotte and the team. The audit process this year was a challenging one. There was a lot of change going on in the town, and there was a lot of effort that particularly, no offense Charlotte, no offense Teresa, but particularly that Charlotte put in with respect to getting ready for the audit and preparing the financial statements and getting us here today. Dealing with auditors like myself and my team is never an easy endeavor, but particularly this year it was a challenge. So I really just want to take the opportunity to say thank you very much for all the hard work and effort. So assuming the committee has the package in front of them, I'm just looking at a second screen here where I've got it beside me. If you're wondering why I'm looking off to the side, that's why. I've just scrolled down to the executive summary and a few things that I'll bring to your attention. And again, welcome questions at any time. So first of all, in terms of our audit scope, in terms of engagement, we performed our audit exactly in accordance with the plan that we presented to this committee. So there were no changes to that whatsoever. No changes to our audit risks either. They're just a reminder that we follow a risk-based audit approach. So, we've highlighted 5 risk areas, and we go into a little bit more detail in a few pages in the document. But this is by no means a comprehensive list of all of the risks in our file. These are just some of the more significant ones that we wanted to bring to your attention. So no changes to those. With respect to materiality and uncorrected misstatements, there is one uncorrected misstatement that's a carry forward from last year. The committee might recall it was just relating to a capital asset that was expensed. We understood the reasons why management did that and agreed with it. So that's there as a carry forward item. There were no new uncorrected misstatements to bring to your attention at this stage. So I'm very happy to report that. So that's always some good news. With respect to outstanding matters and next steps, the only items that are outstanding right now are completing the legal letter response process, getting the management representation letter signed, and just completing our subsequent events procedures. So once we get those items taken care of, we can issue our report on your financial statements, but really all that we're waiting for at this stage is the approval from council. So we can't take care of any of those things until council approves the statements. Once they do, we'll take care of those items and be able to issue our clean audit opinion, if you will. So nothing more that we need from Teresa or Charlotte and the team at this stage. And just in conclusion, it's worth pointing out that there were absolutely no restrictions placed on our audit. We had complete access to everything that we asked for as part of the audit process, and we look forward to issuing that unqualified report. In the next couple of pages, that's where we just go through the details of the audit risks that I summarized briefly earlier. Again, those are taken directly out of our audit plan, and what we've done on the right-hand side of those 2 pages is just to add the audit results column, and you can see for all of them they're identified as being no significant issues were noted as a result of this testing, which is always a good thing coming from us. In terms of significant accounting policies, judgments, and estimates, so just a couple of things I want to point out here, and for those of you who've been you've heard me say this before, I apologize, but it is worth repeating. There are a number of estimates that go into the preparation of the town's financial statements, some reasonably big ones too, around your employee future benefits liability, around some of your accrued liabilities, and some other things that go into the statements. So there are a number of hard numbers, if you will, but there are a number of estimates as well. And what I wanted to bring to your attention is that we are comfortable with the process that management has for developing those estimates, and we're comfortable with the estimates themselves. So if I get into the appendices, Appendix 1 is really the only one that I'm going to talk to. Over the course of a couple of pages here, what we've done down the left-hand side is just list the communication requirements directly out of the audit standards. For fun, down the middle column, we've just added the Canadian Audit Standard reference. And on the right-hand side, we've just told you where we've told you about these items. Most of them are referencing to other matters in other areas in this report, or to our master service agreement or our audit plan. And the others are identified as being none or none noted, which once again is always a good thing coming from us. Flying through, Appendix 2 is just a copy of an independence letter. It states that we're independent of the town and thus able to provide you with an independent auditor's report. It's not required to be provided for municipal audits. It's really only for public companies, but we believe it's a best practice, so we'll continue to provide that on an annual basis. Appendix 3 is just a copy of the management representation letter that we're going to be asking management to sign off on. The audit standards, again, require that we show the committee a copy of what it is that we'll be asking management to sign off on. There are no unusual representations in that letter. It's very straightforward. And the last appendix that I just want to speak to, Appendix 4, so if you scroll a few pages down, it starts on page 17 of our report, just on the bottom left-hand corner. It's the last one before 8.2 in your package. This is just around some new and revised accounting standards. And we spoke about this as part of the audit plan. And we had a brief discussion with Teresa and Charlotte towards the end of the audit, really just about preparing for the implementation of these new standards. In particular, the asset retirement obligation standard is going to have a big impact on the town. And it's not just an effort from the finance department. In order to be able to implement that standard, it's going to take a number of different folks within the organization to come together to help with that. We sent some material to Charlotte and Teresa to have a look at, and we're going to have a follow-up discussion in the coming months for how to go about all the legwork that needs to go into implementing that. So I thought I'd highlight it for the committee's attention. It is a big one, and it's going to require a fair bit of time from management in order to get there in terms of the implementation. You don't need to implement it until you get to your December 2023 financial statements. So you still have a year and a half until we get there, but it's a big standard. So there's going to be a little bit of legwork. It's going to need to happen to get there. So with that, I think I'll pause. I realized I went through that at a fairly quick speed, but there wasn't a whole lot to speak to, despite the challenges faced through the audit. It was a smooth audit, so I'm happy to report that. And I'll stop here and simply take any questions.
Yes, Michael.
Sorry, I don't know, Trevor, if this is for you or Teresa, but the Appendix 3 Draft Management Representation Letter, the first item under financial statements refers to the Master Services Agreement between the town and Deloitte, dated January 4th, 2017. Was there not a new Master Services Agreement when we did the new RFP?
We didn't need one because the terms and conditions were still applicable. So no, we didn't do another one. What we are going to do next year is just update the terms and conditions. That's a requirement to do every few years. So we're going to do that for next year's audit, but we didn't have to because we were already previously engaged.
Okay.
So any other questions or comments with respect to the audit committee report? Okay, seeing none, could I have a motion that the Pelham Finance and Audit Committee receive the 2021 Deloitte report for information purposes? Wayne, Bill seconder, all in favor? Okay, great, thank you. So that moves us to 8.2, the consolidated financial statements.
So I will be presenting the financial statements. I'm just going to see if I can share my screen. Can everyone see the financial statements?
Yes.
Okay. So I know the committee received the statements, they received management summary. So rather than go through both items individually, I'm just going to do a high level overview and then just open it up for questions. As you can see, in 2021, our cash balance increased, and that is primarily because we collected more development charges in 2021 that we haven't spent yet. And you can see, the offsetting deferred revenue obligatory reserve fund that's down here in the liability section for that, as well as some capital projects which were continued to be delayed. The taxes receivable balance has decreased, and that's because in 2020 we had a lot of supplemental bills right at the end of the year, and those weren't actually due until early 2021. So we've had a corresponding decrease this year. Our user charges receivable has increased because we didn't do water shutoffs in 2021 because of the pandemic. So we've determined that we're going to instead add those balances to tax instead of shutting people's water off, because we felt that it was an important health and safety issue that people have access to clean water when they need to be washing their hands during the pandemic and so on. Accounts receivable has increased, and that one is primarily because of the ISIP grant receivable. There are some other fluctuations in there, but about $1.8 million of it is just funds that we've spent on capital in 2021 that were still receivable at year end. The bank indebtedness has gone down slightly. That's our CIBC demand loan, and it's being paid off through regular payments. Accounts payable has decreased slightly. And I think that that had to do with when we had the extra supplementals at the end of the year last year, we also owe the region's portion of their supplementals and their development charges. So those were higher last year. Our other liabilities have increased slightly because of more deposits held in trust. And deposits and deferred revenues, can't remember that one off the top of my head right now. That one has decreased, I think, because other deferred revenues have gone down. Yeah, deferred developer contributions were applied to projects and grants as well. So you can see the obligatory reserve funds has increased. That's because we had a real drop in development charges in 2020 when the pandemic hit. And so they started to pick up again in 2021. Our long-term debt has decreased because we made principal payments on debt, but we didn't issue any new debt in 2021. And so as a result of all of those things, you can see that in 2021, our net debt decreased by over $6 million. And our tangible capital assets have increased because we had more capital projects that were done, and we also had almost $6 million worth of contributed tangible capital assets, which is what happens when there are subdivisions that are built by the developer, and then the town assumes those subdivisions. And so those were added to the town's assets as well. And then our prepaid expenses increased because we have an 18-month insurance policy. There were 0 months prepaid in 2020 and 6 months prepaid at the end of 2021. Does anyone have any questions on the balance sheet or the statement of financial position? Okay. So on to the statement of operations. Our tax revenue was slightly higher than budget because we had supplemental revenues that exceeded budget. Our user charges were also above budget, primarily because of the building department and the planning department. And then we had some other fluctuations as well, like camp revenues were up. Our grants were above budget, but I'm just going to take you down to the grant note just to give you a little bit more detail about that. So you can actually see it was our operating grants that were above budget. Some of that was the municipal modernization grants. We didn't know about those when we were prepared the budget. And then our capital grants are below budget, but that's only because the projects have been delayed. So those grant revenues will still be earned, but the projects were delayed. So that causes a timing difference between when the budget's there and when you see the revenue recognized. And then I should also mention with the operating grants, we also received COVID-19 recovery funding of about $347,000. So that was another reason why the actual was above budget, because we didn't know about it when the budget was prepared. So I'm going to go back up here to the statement of operations. So here you can see that just under the $6 million of contributed tangible capital assets, and I just skipped here, the contributions from developers, those are development charges. And the only reason they're below budget is, again, because of delayed capital projects. And then other revenues is significantly above budget. I'm going to take you down to that note as well. So the reason that that one is above budget, one thing is the vaccine clinic reimbursement. So the town ran vaccine clinics out of the MCC, and then we had certain costs that were recoverable. So the vast majority of that is in other revenues. And then also you can see the donations. These are capital donations for the MCC. So the budget was in a prior year. When that project was done, the full $36 million budget showed up in the financial statements. And then as we collect those donations, you see the actuals come in. I'll go back up to the statement of operations. We have equity earnings in PWPI. We have a small gain on disposal, just a few small assets, a truck, and a couple of other little items that were disposed of in the year. And then down to our expenses. So general government was above budget because we had increased legal costs. We had costs related to contract services under the municipal modernization funding. So it had offsetting grant funding, but we didn't budget for those expenses originally. And then we just had a lot of general COVID costs that also impacted our actuals versus budget. And that has funding that we applied from the Safe Restart. On the protection of persons and property, which includes fire and bylaw and so on, it is just slightly below budget. I think that is, we had savings on cannabis odor monitoring costs, and also amortization was below budget. And then for transportation services, we were just slightly below budget due to some staff vacancies, as well as some general savings on loan interest and materials. For environmental services, we were higher than budget because we had an increase in contract services paid to the region for water and wastewater. Cemetery is health services, and that one was pretty close to budget. Recreation expenses were below budget, and that had to do with lower wages and costs during facility closures and cancellations due to COVID-19. And some other staff vacancies. And then in the planning department, we are just slightly above budget due to amortization, which differed than the estimate because we just do our best estimate at the time of budget preparation, as well as contracted services regarding cannabis appeals. Does anyone have any questions on the statement of operations? Okay. So the statement of net debt is just showing the reason for the change. It's decreased from 18.5 million to 12.1 million. And primarily it's because of the surplus that was earned and then as net of any capital transactions. Our prepaids and our other small non-financial assets don't really make a significant difference. It's mostly our capital and what we're doing with that impacts our net debt. And then lastly, the statement of cash flows. So you can see here we generated 11.2 million from operations. It was higher last year, but that was primarily because we had the proceeds on disposal of land in East Fonthill. And we spent a bit more on capital this year than we did last year. We had some delays when the pandemic hit, so we've started to pick up on those a bit. And then on the financing side, we repaid principal on our long-term debt, but we didn't issue any debt. And then we did receive some dividends from our subsidiary this year. Does anyone have any other questions? So I think that I don't think you want me to go through the detailed notes and schedules. I think that gives the overview, but if there's anything else you want me to talk about, let me know.
I just want to mention that the management summary of the 2021 financial review is the section that's going to be included in the annual report.
Okay, so no further questions on that. I guess we need to move to in camera, that the next portion of the meeting to be closed to the public in order to consider the following: 2392B, personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal employees, and 2392J, a trade secret or scientific, technical, commercial, or financial information that belongs to the municipality or local board and has monetary value or potential monetary value. Could I have someone move to go into in camera? Ron, thank you. Bill, seconder, all in favor? Okay, great.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'm going to just give me a moment to put staff into the waiting room and turn off the recording. Through you, Mr. Chair, I just wanted to confirm that the recording has started and that staff are back in the meeting.
Okay, so this moves us to 8.4, that the committee adjourn the in-camera session and that the committee do now rise with no report. And mover, please. Wayne, thank you. Seconder. Michael, thank you. All in favor? So carried. Okay, so oops, kind of messed up a little bit. I apologize. So that the Finance and Audit Committee hereby direct the chair to provide a letter to council forthwith indicating whereas the Pelham Finance and Audit Committee received the 2021 Deloitte report for information, and whereas the Pelham Finance and Audit Committee received the 2021 Town of Pelham Consolidation, consolidated financial statements. Now, therefore, that the committee hereby recommends that council approve the 2021 Town of Pelham Consolidated Financial Statements. So could I have a mover for that, please? Bill, seconder, Ron, all in favor? So carried. Thank you. All right, so that brings us, Trevor, are you done now?
I think I'm gonna head out then. Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Trevor.
So thanks again, Trevor, for all you've done for the town, and look forward to working with you in the future. Thank you.
Thanks very much, everyone. Take care. Bye.
Bye.
Bye now. Okay, when do you have to leave, Bill? Another 15 minutes? Yeah.
We should be good.
So do you think we can get through the operating financial report? Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Yes,
Yep.
Bill?
Sorry, John, just before we get into that, I probably picked my timing a little off. I probably should have made some comments before going in camera in relation to post, Charlotte giving the financial statement overview. And it came up in the discussion in the camera. So I just figured now is probably a good time, if that's okay with you, to make some
Sure.
over the last 3 years, in relation to the town's financial state and how it's improved, has been quite drastic, in my opinion, with the reduction in net debt, the increase in cash, replenishment of reserves, like everything is definitely moving in the right direction from a town. I couldn't have been happy to be a part of the committee over the last 3-year duration, with the establishment of some of those policies and council support in, supporting those policies and living by them to get to the state that we're in now versus when I first joined the committee. So definitely wanted to give staff kudos to the progression over the last few years as to how much advancement in this space has been accomplished. And I felt this was a good time to make those comments, and I wanted to make sure I did it as part of the open camera session. So yeah. Thanks for letting me make those comments.
Yeah, and I have to echo those comments. The state of the town's finances are a heck of a lot different than what they were 3.5 years ago, and we really like to thank staff for all their hard work in guiding council through this and looking for a continued brighter future. So thank you all.
Yeah, John, I really think from the town's perspective and council, especially, and obviously I'm not here to give any political guidance or anything, it is a very impressive and a story that should be celebrated for the college community, because, all that hesitation and some of those old aspects of management, whatever the case historically, the progress is significant, and I do think it is something that should be celebrated. I think it's a story that the community should hear, and it's one to commend management and council on over their term. So definitely something like an elevator speech or something like that with some quick facts on where we were and where we are now, I think would be extremely well received from a community perspective. And I think it should recognize some of the efforts around the table as to how we got here. So just close out with some of those comments.
Yeah, and that might be some direction that we can give to Leah. I'm sure she's got access to this meeting, that she can draft something up, and, you know, just to quote Bill, because I think, and include Michael in that, because they're the ones that don't have as much skin in the game as staff and counselors, and it's nice to hear the comments coming from someone who's not, they don't have as much skin in the game. So yeah, if we can direct staff to have Leah draft something up for the voice in Niagara this week, it would be, as Bill says, it's a great news story. So thank you. Yes, Michael?
I just wanted to say, as a taxpayer who has a financial background, the level of transparency is something to be applauded as well. And I don't think that's a story you can tell. I just, you know, again, as someone with a financial background who's a taxpayer, you know, having access to information now we didn't have before, and it's really refreshing. So kudos.
Yeah, thank you for that, Michael. Okay, so Teresa, are you doing the operating?
Yes, yeah, so so the next section, the operating financial report, this is done in the format of the budget format. So this is on the modified cash basis. The financial statements that Charlotte presented were on the accrual basis. So we always like to bring the numbers back into the format that council and the audit committee are used to seeing. The notes are very detailed in each section. So I think, as opposed, and having, you know, Charlotte having gone through the financial statements, I don't think I need to go through in detail, but I'm going to go through and to say on the first schedule, which is the revenue schedule, just a couple of highlights. Obviously, the COVID grant funding has had, you know, a significant impact on our financial results, on the revenue numbers being higher. Is there anything specific here that anyone has a question that hasn't been answered by the notes attached to the schedule? I just want to be respectful of Bill's time. Yeah, no, okay, so I'll move on to the expenditures. The same thing here. We have the budget, the original budget, where the actual results are at December 31st, and we also have the comparative information from 2020. And as you can see with the notes, where we have gone over budget, most of that pertains to COVID, and we have the offsetting grant or reimbursement from the vaccination clinics to offset those additional expenses. So is there anything specific, any particular questions that anyone has on this schedule? Okay, I see none. The next one is the Meridian Community Center. This is the one that, you know, that has the monthly detail of all the expenditures. And I think what's nice to see what happened at the community center, considering we were shut down for 6 months last year, is that the arena revenues did pick up once we opened up for the 6 months of the year. So the budget was $355,000 and we were almost at $482,000, which is pretty incredible. Under the miscellaneous revenue, we have about $253,000 of the vaccination clinic reimbursement in there. So you'll see that at the bottom of the schedule, while you actually see the net surplus before debt and other expenditures, the budget was a deficit of 1.6 and the actual came in at almost 1.1. So that's a significant decrease in the expenses being over revenue. And then at the bottom, the net surplus deficit is down by about $230,000. So that's a really good news story, considering, as I said, in the first 6 months of the year when the community center was shut down, we just didn't even know how the year was going to end up. So being able to, when we opened up, we saw the response with people, you know, having the ice for the summer, both rinks being open, and the demand was there. We were like 12 hours a day with the ice, and I think we were one of the few municipalities in the whole region that actually had the ice open 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. And that really has had such a positive impact. Not to mention the vaccination clinics. I think we really have to just realize that the Meridian Community Center had 66 vaccination clinics with over 73,000 people vaccinated. I mean, that is just a tremendous story. So not only were the 73,000 people vaccinated, just think of each person probably had a person that went with them. So all the people coming and going, and we were able to maintain a very safe facility and provide such a wonderful service. I mean, with a lot of positive comments from people saying it was one of the nicest vaccination clinics in the region, and people were really appreciative that the community center was able to provide all of those clinics. So that was, I would say, a highlight for the town. We didn't have the major event of Summerfest last year. So this is the second year that we didn't have in 2020 and 2021 Summerfest. And so that is one area that one of the events that the town didn't do this year. But all the other events happened, Christmas in Pelham, which we didn't have in 2020, we had in 2021, which was very well received. And also the programming. There was actually, the camps were full, wait list for the camps. So they did very, very well, along with the swimming as well. And the last schedule is Schedule 5, Appendix. I mean, it's the capital projects. So this is broken up in 2 schedules. One is the 2021 capital projects, and then we always have the carry forward from prior years. And so all the details are here for the projects. What's important for this schedule is that on the last page, what we have as far as a carry forward to 2022 is $8.1 million of projects that still need to be spent. So when you see the cash balance being so high, part of that is that we've got some capital projects that we haven't spent. Of the total projects that are being carried forward, approximately, I think like 4.5 million will come from the reserves. The rest is grant money. So just to give you an idea how this is being funded. So the details are here. I think we've had a lot of really good progress this year as far as getting out the RFPs for the capital projects for this year and moving forward on completing some of these other projects as well. So I don't know if there's any questions relating to these schedules here. I'll be more than happy to answer them.
Yes, Michael?
Teresa, I was just wondering, the vaccination grant or payment was a receivable. Has that been received?
Yes, we just received it last week, 291,452. Yes.
Just wondered if public health was going to stiff you for a while or not.
No, we received the money last week. We're very happy. Yeah.
Yes, Wayne?
Yes, thank you. I was wondering, I just went through a review of a business of our own business the other day, and our fuel costs are actually doubled from what they did last year. How is that going to impact us, that type of thing? Because our fuel costs for exactly the same number of hours, you know, within a few hundred hours on machines is 100% more.
So is this for Councilor Olson? Is this in relation to our fleet? Is that what you're referring to, or just fuel for the facilities?
I would say it's the fleet. I would say it's the fleet plus the landscaping equipment and all the rest of the stuff. Are we seeing the same kind of thing?
Yes, we are for 2022. We are seeing an increase. I can't say if it's exactly 100%, but there's definitely has been an increase in the cost of fuel.
Yeah, that was diesel. Our diesel was 100%. So And the other would, we learned the other night that vehicles are going to be more expensive, much more expensive. They
Yeah.
will be shown up in the next budget, I assume.
Probably, yeah. Just the prices for, I mean, there's a demand for them and the supply is not there, so they're definitely going up.
Okay.
Not to mention we can't get them. That's the other issue that we talked
Yeah.
about. Yeah,
Okay. Thank you.
you're welcome.
So any other questions of Teresa? Okay, seeing none, I'd like someone to move that the Pelham Finance and Audit Committee receive the operating MCC Transit and Capital reports dated December 31st, 2021 and March 31st, 2022 for information. So could I have someone move that, please? Ron, thank you. Seconder, Bill, all in favor? So carried, thank you. Okay, that brings us to reserves.
Okay, well, I'm going to share about the reserves and I'll share my screen again. And I think similar, I'll probably go higher level and let you ask me if you want to go further. So last year at the end of the year, these are our reserves and reserve funds, which are different than the obligatory deferred revenue like development charges and parkland dedication and certain grants. We had a balance of 10.1 million, and at the end of 2021, we had a balance of 13.9 million. And the reason for the increase is, as Teresa was saying, we do have capital projects that have been delayed, and the amount that's delayed, which will be funded from these reserves, is actually higher than it was at the end of 2020. So it's closer to 4.8 million. And so that's part of the reason why the balance is higher. And then in the report, I also discussed the cash balance. So right now, if you were to take our operating cash position and compare it to what we should have for the reserves and obligatory deferred revenue, we actually have slightly less than what we need, but we're short about $1 million, but that's because we have 1.86 million receivable for that ISIP grant. So we have to pay for that capital project out of our cash. And then when they pay us the grant in accordance with the agreement, then it replenishes that cash. So we're just a little bit short right now, but we will be receiving those funds shortly. And then it will restore us so that we have cash equivalent to all of our reserves and obligatory reserve funds. And so other than that, we were able to, as discussed in the monthly reports, transfer in some specifically identifiable amounts into reserves this year. We have some COVID-19 recovery funding. It's about $128,000 that's going to carry forward to 2022 for COVID-related operating expenses. And the drawdown here of $535,000 was the Safe Restart funding that we carried forward. We had to use that for COVID-related expenses. It wasn't something we had discretion to hang on to in our working capital reserve at any rate. So we used it as planned, and we were able to save a little bit and carry it forward into 2022. Other than that, we have MCC capital donations that came in and paid for the debt that was taken out. The building department had a surplus. The wastewater had a surplus, and the water actually had a deficit for 2021. And then at the end of the day, after we'd done all of those transfers, we had including $147,000 to the land acquisition reserve in accordance with our reserve and reserve fund policy. Then there was an additional $19,000 that transferred into the working capital reserve. So that's kind of a high level. Is there any other questions, or did you want me to look at any of the schedules in detail?
I just wanted to make a comment, Charlie. So I think what's really important here, as Bill mentioned earlier about where we came from. So where we came from, I would say, like even 4 years ago, we had about, I'd say, at least 6 reserves that were in a deficit. Right now, we only have one, which is the land acquisition. That's the one that's taken us a little bit of time to bring that balance down. But other than that, all of the reserves are in a positive balance. So I think that's another great news story to celebrate where the reserves have gone to. I know that the reserve policy that was developed and approved by council really, has helped us to move towards, trying to bring the reserve to the right level. So I think that's definitely a great news story. And as we sell land and, get other funds, we're going to keep bringing that land reserve, bring that deficit down to a positive level. That's the goal.
Mm-hmm. And in terms of the obligatory reserve funds, as I mentioned earlier, the development charges did really pick up in 2021, which is good because in 2020, at certain points, we weren't sure we were going to collect as much as we needed for the debt payments on the DC that year, but we collected about double. So I think we collected around 3 million and our debt payments are 1.6. So it was in a better position at the end of 2021. Sorry, Bill.
Oh, that's okay. I just wanted to just state that unfortunately I have to sign off right now. So I just wanted to say bye to everyone before I take off. And you're pretty close to closing out. It's actually unfortunate I have to sign off early. You're almost there. So
Yeah.
Good luck and I'll see you at the next meeting.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks, Bill. Thank you.
Everyone, take care.
Okay. So does anyone have any questions with respect to the reserves at this point? Yes, Michael?
So I just wanted to ask about the land acquisition. What was the reserve number is only 147,000. Is that the annual amount?
Yes.
So we contribute, we managed to contribute a little bit extra this year.
Yes, we did.
So the land acquisition, under the policy, there isn't really a set amount unless we have a surplus for the year. And whenever the town has a surplus, 147,000 off the top will go into that land acquisition reserve until we return it to like a surplus position. And so we were able to transfer in that 147 this year, which means we had a surplus that was, over 160,000. And we transferred in there and we had 19,000 left for working capital.
Yep.
So in that in itself is a good news story because we weren't working that deficit down at all. And over the last couple of years since we've implemented this policy, we're starting to see that go down and get that monkey off our back.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions with respect to reserves? Seeing none, I'd like a motion, please, that the Pelham Finance and Audit Committee receive the reserves report for information purposes. So Wayne and Ron seconder, all in favor? So carried. Thank you. Okay, financial risks.
So the only update that I wanted to give to the committee was that we did receive the vaccination clinic money. I know Michael just asked us that, so we received it last week, so that's good. And we have a little bit, as Charlotte mentioned, carried forward in a reserve for any additional COVID expenses that we might incur in 2022. So at the town, we're still wearing, masks. So we still have the protective equipment that everyone is wearing. But other than that, we're fortunate so far that we haven't had any, the MCC is operational, hasn't closed. So we haven't incurred lost revenues that way in 2022 so far. So knock on wood, things are looking good. Well, better.
Yes.
We're moving forward, so
We're
that's
not
good.
there yet, but
No, we're moving
yeah.
forward. I mean, like the last couple of years when we had the lockdowns and the closures of the MCC, that had a major impact to the town.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's my update.
So in that's a good point. Like we've gone through 2 years of heavy impacts on our financials because of COVID, and we've come out of both years with flying colors. So that in itself is extremely positive. I don't think we've got any unfinished business. So the next meeting was scheduled for June 8th, and I've had conversation with Teresa, and we've got nothing to add to that meeting over the next couple of weeks. Yes, Teresa?
Yeah, no, I just wanted to say that the annual report, originally we were going to have the annual report come on June the 8th, but the section that the Finance and Audit Committee approves is the financial overview, which has been included, and you've seen that. And so once the annual report is completed, we will send it out to the Audit Committee for review before we send it out to Council. It's just that right now we don't have it completed at this moment.
Yeah, so we won't be doing a meeting per se for that. You know, please take the opportunity to review it and make comment, or if you don't have any issues with it, just reply to Teresa to say that you're okay with that, that final report. Further to that, we have a meeting scheduled for November 16th, and that will be, there will be a new council at that point in time. So I believe all councils effective August 16th are going to be terminated, or whatever is the kind word for it, but will no longer be, none of the committees will be meeting. So this is our last meeting for the Pelham Finance and Audit Committee. And, you know, I can't express enough on how important this committee has been to the town, and sincere thank you to all the committee members and to staff. You know, it's been a good 4 years, and very positive things have happened out of this committee, and I want to thank everyone for their input and efforts into this committee. So thank you.
So what will happen? I guess just depend on the will of the next council. Is that right? Or will you be recommending to the next council that there be a committee?
I'll let the CEO talk about the process.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's about time you talked at some meeting.
Yeah, really.
There's a council meeting in the first week of September. And at that meeting, we'll have a report to council looking at the town's entire committee structure, including this one, and making some recommendations about terms of reference, which one should carry on. It's no secret we'll be recommending this carry on. As Councilor Wink says, it's done tremendous good. So, and its utility's not yet gone because we're not yet out of the swamp, kind of thing, even if we can see a path out of it. So there will be a report. It will go to this council. That'll sort of make a public conversation happen, and at least give us some principled marching orders. From there, when the new council gets sworn in on November 21, 25, 21, I want to say.
Oh, no, 15th. Oh, the 21st.
You're right.
You're right. Yeah.
No, I think you're right. I think
no, 15th is the new council, but the 21st is the swearing in. You're right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So that day, the new council will get to make a decision either its first act or at its first meeting thereafter. We're working through that. But before this calendar year is over, the new council will get to decide which committees it wants to run or have run, and then we'll advertise, et cetera, and hopefully have new committees up and running somewhere in February of the next calendar year. So that's rough. Now, this one might be the first one to get done because realistically, the new council will pass a budget in January. And of course, providing some commentary and assistance is one of the 3 or 4 or 5 key things this committee has done. So there's that. But certainly, at any rate, bottom line is we do a report recommending what structural changes we think are needed across the corporation. This is a small part of that. That's taken by this group of elected officials and discussed and commentary given, et cetera, et cetera. We react to that and come with something very specific to the next council, which of course can change it, but at least then we have some reasonable guidance, and we'll, it'll be pretty well formed for them to make decisions right away at the start, and then we'll get around to appointing people.
Yeah, and because it's an election year, like the whole budget process is changing because it ends up being delayed because it'll be the new council that will be approving that new budget, but not sure when we're trying to have that budget in front of council. Just give me a rough month, please.
Well, our goal is January, but the new council may feel differently about that. This year or this cycle, the new council will be sworn in essentially 2.5 weeks earlier than you experienced. Yeah. So it gives us at least one extra meeting cycle, which may or may not feel like a lot. Probably not 100% of the council will be starting with no experience. So we might have one extra cycle and possibly not everyone rookie. And that will dramatically cut down the amount of time needed. Also, Miss Charlotte and Teresa and I we haven't landed on all the plan, but certainly we're going to be making a bunch of documentation public in that in-between time, because there's no reason not to let the world see and hear at least the draft budget documents, so that even if people aren't sworn in, whoever the 7 new people are, it can be made publicly available. So that's something they can read on and chew about, even if they're not sworn in yet.
So do you see a possibility of the new Finance and Audit Committee being up and running before the budget gets presented to council? Is that a possibility?
Certainly what I see is it would be the one we would want to have established first off the mark.
Are you tired all the time? Watch this. If you want to know
what. Wasn't me.
Yeah, fair enough.
My hands are up too.
So where we have to staff a dozen committees or so, this one will be literally top of the pile, and we'll be the first ones appointed and first ones to meet. And similarly, once we have applications from people and we have public documents, we can send them to them. So even if they aren't meeting as a group, and even if their people aren't approved, they're public documents, so it doesn't really matter. We'll send to all those people in hopes that there might be some contemporaneous advice. Council, of course, also has the legal capacity to wait till the end of, April 1st, essentially the end of March, to pass the budget. And while we hope they'll do so in January, ultimately that's council's decision, not staff's.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for that update. Okay, so anyone? Yes, Wayne.
Yes, I just going back to the progress that's been made here. Just looking at it as an organization, starting with the decision to change things, and all of a lot of the decisions that were made going down the line from council to staff and to the staff, all of the staff, a lot of good decisions and good commitments have been made and met here. Because this is a whole organization effort, and I'd like to add my comments to the staff and congratulating them on their effort, because I too appreciate what they've done here, because there's times when work of civil work is sometimes a little bit unrewarding, but I think in this case, you look back on the decisions that you had to make every day, whether to spend this and not spend it, those decisions have been largely correct all the way down along the line for the whole year, and going back to the 4 years, I think, or this wouldn't have happened like this.
Thank you.
Okay, not hearing any further comments. Again, thanks to the committee for all their efforts over the 4 years, and really appreciate all the input that's been provided. So on that, I'd like to propose that this regular meeting of the Pelham Finance and Audit Committee be adjourned. Could I have a mover, please? Wayne, seconder? Ron? All in favor? So carried.
Thank you.
Thanks, folks.
Good night, everybody.
Good night,
Thank you.
everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
Bye.
Okay, bye.